I want to bring in now Jan Crawford, who's outside the Supreme Court, where the earlier decision made there, the 4-4 deadlock, begat the president's remarks. And Jan, I know you were listening along with all of us. What to make of those remarks?
He really made kind of two major points. The first one, a practical one. Remember, the program that he wanted to implement would have protected about 4 million people from deportation. They were parents who had been in this country at least 5 years, who had no criminal record, whose children were either born here or were here legally. They would have been shielded from deportation, and they would have been able to get work permits and driver's licenses and other benefits. He signaled today that their status, they will not be deported. They're very low priority. The thing is, though, they won't be able to get these work permits without this program in place. But the broader point I think he made was about the Supreme Court itself, and he really used this 4-4 deadlock to make the case that Congress needs to confirm his nominee to replace the late Justice Antonin Scalia, Judge Merrick Garland, who's a judge here on the Federal Appeals Court. Republicans, of course, have said that they will not consider that nomination. Many are refusing even to meet with him, as the president pointed out during his remarks, and that the next president will be replacing Justice Scalia. Now, this is not the ideal case to actually make that argument. I think it's important to point out, because if Scalia had been on the Supreme Court, it would have gone 5-4. He would have provided the key vote with the conservatives to strike down the president's program. There would have been a decision that would have curtailed the president's authority in these cases, as opposed to just this kind of deadlock punt that they did. But even if the Republicans in Congress wanted to consider Merrick Garland's nomination, which of course they don't, he would not have been on the court to consider this case anyway. So the president really, I think, is making the bigger point that this is the world that we're in now. 8 justices on the Supreme Court, and on these momentous cases, these momentous issues that divide American life and are critically important to the way that we function, that they are very well in jeopardy of being 4-4 ties. And he's using that to put pressure on Republicans in Congress to have a hearing for his nominee, Judge Merrick Garland. I think that case, probably, despite him having that bully pulpit, which we saw just now, I think that case is probably going to fall, though, on deaf ears with Republicans who, up until this point, have held firm.
Jan, even as he spoke to the fact that he had seen the limits of his executive authority reached now here, and as you mentioned, he used this opportunity to say that the current which he laid at the feet of Republicans in Congress, the blocking of the nomination of Merrick Garland is a not sustainable one. He also took this opportunity to take a couple of shots at Donald Trump's stated plans that deporting 11 million people and building a wall that would cost tens of billions of dollars. He derided those two things as a fantasy. And I wonder, in putting Merrick Garland out there again, and you mentioned there's been no reason to believe that we will have a hearing with regard to Merrick Garland. If things continue to trend in terms of optics, if things continue to trend further in favor, perhaps, of Hillary Clinton come November, might Republicans in Congress begin to see Merrick Garland as a best case scenario?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. And already you're seeing some, Republican kind of conservative legal types making the case that, look, Merrick Garland is as good as we're going to get from a Democratic president. He's in his 60s. He's considered kind of a moderate liberal. He'd certainly be a reliable vote for the left, but he's not a, flamethrower that they may get if a president taking the office in January wanted to nominate, say, a 45-year-old kind of far left, hard leftist. So you're already seeing some conservatives making that argument. But Republicans in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, they are not going to budge on this. I think it would be deflating at this point, especially, when they're thinking about turnout being an issue. This is an issue that does motivate some parts of their base. And so I think the best case scenario for Merrick Garland, if he were to get confirmed before the next president, would be, say, something in November or December, after perhaps we have a President Clinton instead of a President Trump. Or he's going to have to hope that Hillary Clinton will renominate him. Many people think that President Clinton would go with that kind of younger, hard left kind of nominee. But I think that there's growing kind of awareness that she may actually be inclined to renominate him. Does she really want to pick this fight right out of the box? She would get more nominations, of course. This is a very an aging Supreme Court. The next president is likely to get at least one or two more nominations in addition to the one to replace Justice Scalia. So I think there is kind of this growing sense that it's not all that unlikely that she would just renominate him. It would be a reliable vote for the left. So at some point, perhaps we will see a Justice Garland, whether or not it's from a President Obama or if Hillary Clinton were to win, a President Clinton.
Which is certainly fascinating. Again, I've been struck by the let's make a deal quality here, the bird in the hand quality, again, as even people like the Senate Majority Leader look at, well, they read the polls like everyone else, and maybe they do believe that this might be the best we can do. Also, you mentioned that it is an issue here with regard to immigration that does motivate the GOP base. But we heard the president in his remarks today also make a veiled suggestion that it might also be motivating the base and the voter turnout in the favor of the Democrats as well. Certainly, if nothing else, politicizing this issue and putting it now front and center as the issue that will define what we see come November.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting the way the president kind of framed just his word choice. When he talked about kind of the choices that we want to make as a people, and he specifically referred to the White House, and then he kind of invoked our forefathers and everyone who come here as immigrants. So I just thought the way he framed that, I agree. I mean, it was very interesting because, of course, immigration already, we see it as a major theme in this election. And now with the Supreme Court's refusal or inability, I guess I should say, to reach a decision in this case involving the president's immigration policy, that's only going to amp up kind of our look at immigration as a theme in this election, and certainly for turnout. You can't imagine, how many people. I mean, there's still a decent-sized crowd here, but this morning, this case really struck a chord. Of course, you're talking about 4 million people who would have been affected, but it goes much even beyond those 4 million people. So this was really a motivating case for a lot of people, especially when their lives are on the line. So I absolutely agree. I think that we'll see this debate continue, and the president's framing of it, I thought, was really interesting.
The framing, of course, after the decision, or really a lack thereof, the deadlock that we saw at the Supreme Court, something he noted as well, that there was a non-decision. He made sure to mention that as well. All political rivers on this issue running there today. Jan Crawford, we very much appreciate the insights.
Thanks, Josh.